Before
Thank you.
before opening the Q&A to the audience, I know you talked about what compelled you to make the film in your introduction, but it's such an ambitious undertaking. I'm wondering if you could talk about how challenging a production it was.
Yeah. I mean, I initially would have thought that, especially when I had the idea that we should do it in as close to the mother tongue of the actual team as we could, I thought that that would have been the biggest challenge. That turned out to be truly, I think, the greatest advantage. These guys, once they realized, and I'll let them speak to this, once they realized we were doing this, we were serious, that we wanted to shoot the film as you saw it, I think they threw themselves into these roles in ways that you can't pay for. It was an opportunity to tell this story in the language, as close to possible, the language of the team. So kind of a half answer to your question, that's what I thought the hardest part would have been. I have to say, there wasn't any one time where I felt like the challenge was too daunting. And I swear, the gratitude for that should go to Joe and Anthony and Steckler, everybody at Agbo, because it was, no first-time director has ever had the level of support that I had, has ever had Mauro Fiore, shooting the movie, and Phil Ivey making it look like Mosul, even though it was Marrakesh. So no, it's a lame answer, but at no time did I feel like, God, this is too big or it's too challenging. Yeah.
Well, going off the first part of your answer, maybe the cast would like to jump in and talk about what attracted them to the project and what the experience was like.
Thank you so much to be here in Toronto. Thank you so much. It was a really, like Matthew said, is a big challenge to do like this project, and in Arabic language, a whole movie in Arabic language. Sorry. Come on. Okay, sorry. Yeah, like what I said, it's really big challenge to be in Arabic, and they did a lot of job. The director and the producer, they did a lot of search. They hired a lot of people to know our culture and our language. There's the script supervisor. It's Iraqi lady, and they hired a lot of people for that, and they hired a lot of people, the company from U.S. to teaching us about the army, like how to use the weapons, how to clean the rooms, how to do everything in like the street, everything. It's really it was really hard. It's a big challenge for us to like.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Suhail. It was for us, once we knew more and more about the project, and we get to know Matthew and all the rest of the team. I mean, it was just obvious to try to be as truthful as possible.
If there are any questions in the audience, please raise your hand. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
So 2 questions. First one is about the approach to subtitling and the choice to be sparing and not translating everything. Yeah. And second question is about how do you know that the emotion of the performances and the scene is right when you don't speak the language?
Yeah. Thank you for noticing that. My fear is that people are like, oh, he missed a subtitle there. He missed a subtitle there. Exactly. That was, working with the crew and especially working with Alex Rodriguez, my editor, just sitting there day after day and figuring out what are the absolutes that we have to hear, that we have to read, and how much can we get away with not mucking up the screen at all times with dialogue, with subtitles. So it was just, months of finding the right balance. And then if there was something that I wanted just between two characters, like that last moment where the little girl grabs the bracelet, that was subtitled up to very late, and I thought that should just be between the father and the daughter. So it was a lot of kind of painstaking work, just trying to figure out what are the absolute necessities when it came to subtitles. The second question, it just comes down to the people I had around me, protecting me from myself every day of the shoot. 10 cast and crew for us on Mosul were Iraqi born. Suhail actually was a huge help and resource. He was born and raised in Baghdad, was a known actor in Baghdad until he had to flee in the 80s when Saddam gave control of the arts to one of his kids. Zainab Al-Hariri, who was my script supervisor, was born and raised in Baghdad. Her father was a physician who was part of a group that tried to kill Saddam. And they were very close, but there were too many civilians around, so they didn't go forward, and that was the thing that actually got them found out. So he was captured and tortured and murdered, had made kind of allowances for this, and Zainab and her mother were able to get out of the country before they were grabbed. Sam Saleh, who I think is here, was a translator, born and raised in Baghdad. These are people who are on set every day. Born and raised in Baghdad, was with his brother in the basement of his house in Baghdad while there was an artillery battle going on between the Republican Guard and the 3rd Infantry, and they were starving. They had run out of food, and so they're waiting to see which side wins this particular battle. That's the side they're going to have to go to get food. And it happened to be the American Army. Sam goes to them. His father was an English teacher, so he speaks spectacular English. And he tells them what the plight is. There are more people in the neighborhood who are starving. So the officer of the 3rd Infantry, they find the Republican Guard's food stash. They got all the best stuff. And then Sam's responsible for feeding what remains of his neighborhood for the next 2 weeks off that stash. American Army is so enamored with him, they bring him back to the United States. He becomes a U.S. citizen. The more you get to know the cast and crew, the more those stories, there are dozens just like that. So, long-winded answer to your question, I would rely on them every day, every shot, every take to tell me they got the dialect right. They got the mannerism right. They're from a part of the country where the mannerisms would be X, or you would say a word like Y. And at any point, they could say, that one didn't work. And there were a few that were heartbreaking because they were great takes, but you would hear the Amman Jordan accent from some of our actors, and we would have to redo it. So at no point did we compromise. At no point did we try and find the easy way out. And again, the shortest answer is we just had this spectacular group of people that told me when we got it right.
Yes, go ahead. So the question is about how much of the war scenes were real footage?
Zero. It was all stuff that we shot. The very first, the opening scenes, the drone shots, that's actually Mosul. After that, once you get into the cafe and the eye through the bullet hole, everything is Marrakesh and everything is what we shot. Is that an answer to your question? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So the question's about the authenticity
Yeah.
in the film from the beginning of the process.
Yeah.
Like how were you able to get that into?
I based pretty much that whole structure off Luke's article. Luke Mogelson at the New Yorker was embedded with this SWAT team for weeks, and wrote this long form piece that is just spectacular. So I took a lot of the raw material from that. And then, as we got into pre-production, we started running it through one of the men that he used in Mosul was this man named Sangar, who was his, we used as kind of a cultural advisor. We could never get him out of Iraq. They wouldn't let him leave. So we would Skype with him. He would send Phil everything from what the correct uniform was to those boxes of cigarettes they're carrying into the basement. He sent us those because those are the cigarettes that are smoked in that part of the world. We ran everything through a Golden Division Special Forces sergeant in Iraq, another advisor we could never get out. And the company he worked with, Tiger Swan, then sent 2-3 advisors that ran a full boot camp for these guys for 3 weeks, 10 hours a day. They went through 10 miserable hours a day. That's why he's laughing. I wouldn't relent. That I didn't want them to look like, Navy SEALs, like these trained, perfect, tip of the spear type soldiers. I wanted them to look like what they actually are in real life, raw, dirtier, but the reason they know how to clear a room and look behind a door is because one time they did it and the guy in front of them died, and so now they do it a different way, and that's what I wanted to embody. So the Tiger Swan guys have actually advised and trained indigenous forces in Iraq as well. So again, there was no part of this that we that we got hyperbolic on or got ridiculous with. The whole piece about trying to get back to his family was a tangent of Luke's story that grabbed me, where this hottie, I think his name is in real life, could see his home and sometimes was 200, 300 yards away, but it just happened to be on the wrong side of a line, the wrong side of the Tigris. That actually is a better answer to your question. The hardest part is that there are no rivers in Morocco, so we had to scramble to make minefields instead of rivers. But that piece that is the spine of the story is Luke's article. So I hope that answers. I can go on and on about how we tried to stick with the veracity.
I think I saw another hand in the middle. No? Okay, yeah.
I just wanted to congratulate you for showing Muslim people as badass heroes.
Thank you. Thank you.
My question is that your country has very complicated relationships with Muslim people.
Yeah.
I suspect that as soon as the president might tweet something.
Oh, we should be so lucky. We should be so lucky. Yeah. Yeah.
Getting this movie in front of Americans, given the history and the relationship.
So, considering the political climate, what is the plan for getting this viewed in the United States? Maybe the producers want to chime in on this one.
Yeah, sure. We're in the process of developing our plan in terms of how we roll the movie out in the United States and elsewhere, and this our experience here at the festival is going to be a big part of us finding that plan. but look, we think this movie. Look, if this is one of those movies that feels like it should have been made years ago. You know, the idea, because Iraq has loomed so large in the American consciousness now for so many years, and because we've seen some great movies about our experience with the war, but we have never seen one told specifically from the Iraqi point of view. And so this movie is such an essential sort of piece of the puzzle that we've all been experiencing. And I think it's also the most human and simple and relatable and empathetic portrait yet that we've seen of that wartime experience in Iraq. So we think, when the time is right, I think the audiences in America and elsewhere are going to be very eager to experience this film and this story and have a very powerful connection with these characters and their narrative.
One last audience question. We'll go right in front.
I don't think you'll have a problem with getting it out in the States because it's really not heavy politically. It's very human content and the situations a soldier over there has to face. And it's brilliant.
Thank you.
You've done all of them.
Thank you.
Now, I'd like to
Do you run a studio? Bummer.
But if you write on Fox, I'll post it.
Excellent.
Because I think they would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Right? Have all of you thought of a way of controlling the ISIS situation?
Sorry. So the question is about.
Have any of you thought of how you would solve the situation with ISIS?
It's a heavy question. About
Yeah.
how,
She'd like to think about, how we might fix our own problems.
Yeah.
maybe you have some thoughts on resolving the conflict. The question is about what could be done to resolve the conflict with ISIS.
Have any of you thought about any ideas?
I mean, I'll go first, and then I'd love to hear what Mohammed thinks of this. But I don't know how you deal with. You just saw it happen with these putative Taliban talks that were supposed to happen at Camp David in my country this past weekend. I don't know how you make peace with this movement that is so retrograde and so ugly and so violent outside of war. It's a really awful answer, but I think that's the only way to do it, is to go to war and beat them on the battlefield. In large part, that seems to have happened in Mosul. Like I said in my introduction, like this is the pitched battles. This is, and I've talked to the guys about this, they said this would be a particularly violent day, but anytime between July 2014, when ISIS hit, and when they invaded, and up to 2017, that day wouldn't have been completely out of the ordinary. So I think it has worked. It has been. The question is the cost ever worth it? I don't have an answer to that, but it's at least a more manageable fight now. There are still bombings, there are still gun battles, but it's not the predominant feature of the city anymore. So again, a lame answer, but I don't know how you make peace with and or talk peace with a group of people who throw gay people off buildings and take for themselves the families of others, and have harems and treat anybody who doesn't conceive of God the same way they do as someone who deserves absolutely no human treatment.
I don't know if anyone-
I just 2 years ago I had a film here called The Journey, and it's about a female suicide bomber tried to bomb the train station in Baghdad. And the moment before she bombed the train station, I took her for a journey to meet the people about to kill. So to answer you, for me on this film, I was trying to say, okay, if we bring back the humanity that has been lost by the extremism, by Daesh, Al-Qaeda, and give them back this humanity that has been lost, maybe there is a chance of those people going to rethink, because they lost life and they lost to understand the life that we are about. And that's why they go to this madness situation. So I raise this question, I don't have the answer about it. But in Mosul, what we try to do is basically to show the human side of those fighters, that they have been fighting in let's say, an ugly way. Because your enemy, you don't see your enemy. Daesh was not exist. You don't have a classic war. You know, you have one army there and another army there. Daesh was not exist. You fight not existing enemy. And that's the difficult. That's why the Iraqi police people, they have their humanity in the middle of this chaos. And you see it when they, like, for example, in the scene with the two children. You know, this Major Jasem, he's very tough, very harsh. But in the moment that he sees these children, he become a child, like, you know. And that was, I think, important for us in Mosul, and how Matthew captured this moment.
Before we conclude the Q&A, just a note to please stay in your seats for just a minute as our guests exit the cinema. To everyone on stage, thank you so much for being with us here in Toronto.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for sticking around. Thank you.